Talking about rains and things, so I didn't say hi right away, but hello. And I've noticed a lot of people are coming in. I'm not quite sure where we are as far as all of our executive committee members. So have you been paying attention to all the people that are on here? Because we got quite a few, well, 23.
We definitely have a quorum, Madam Chair, although I would want to take the roll to be sure that I've got every name here correct.
Okay, yeah, let's.
Names in the chat.
How many people are we missing right now? Because I'm trying to look right now too, because it doesn't come up obviously in order of who's on the executive committee. So
Say aye if you're not here.
that's a good way of doing it. Do we have? Okay, so I'm gonna just kind of look. We've got our officers. Is Matt Butts on here yet? I didn't see him. I don't hear him.
Good evening.
Matthew just joined.
Okay. I see Gary and Jessica. And
We're missing Miss Morrow, I think.
Yes,
Yeah,
she is driving back from Louisiana, so I don't know that she's going to be on. I do see that we have Gia Christopher, so that's good. Michael, Victoria.
Tara Young.
Yeah, I see her.
She's okay. She's there. Yeah. Let's see.
11, 12, 13. Is Shane on here
Shane?
yet?
Yeah, I was just
He
about to ask about Shane. I didn't see him.
Okay, he said he was going to join, but I don't see him yet. So we're missing Shane Kalish.
And Terry Miller.
And I know he is going to join, but I don't see him yet.
Yep, I think it's
Do we
just
have
Shane
Garrison?
Yeah, Garrison's here.
Present.
I was just asking to try to figure out, like, you know, the number. So thank you. I think, I mean, we definitely have most everybody. So I guess we can give it another minute. I saw a slew of people just come in. See if anybody else comes in. Okay, so I think that, you know, I think we've got plenty enough to call to order. So I'm going to go ahead and call to order at 8:33. I sent out an agenda, which is very short. I can share my screen or I can just say it because it's very short. It's call to order, roll call, public comment, call of the meeting, which is to discuss and take action on anything regarding the 2023 LPCA Convention, including but not limited to canceling our current venue and adopting a new one, and adjournment. So we will go to roll call. Can the secretary please take the roll?
All right. Ms. Robson is here. Mr.
I
Malagon,
am.
Present.
Secretary is here. Mr. Vallandigham,
Here.
Mr. Butts. Thought I saw him. Okay.
I thought I saw him too, but come back to him.
Ms. Stump,
Present.
Ms. Young,
Present.
Mr. Alvstad. He just needs to unmute.
Present, can you?
Yeah, there we go. I heard you then. Mr. Brown,
Present.
Ms. Lepacek, and she needs to unmute too.
Yeah, I heard her say present.
Oh, present. Here.
Okay. Mr. Lima,
Here.
Ms. Morrow, no. Mr. Minoletti,
Here.
Mr. Strawn, no. Ms. Tewksbury,
Present.
Mr. Miller, no. And Mr. Ham.
Present.
Present, yeah.
Hop on to the Zoom meeting because I'm counting on your vote. Do you remember?
I didn't hear you say my name, Chris.
Oh, I did, but I'll mark you down as here.
Okay.
Okay, so right now we have everyone except for Shane and Kalish, and we do have Mr. Ham here. So at this moment, he will be seated unless one of the two of them come in or unless Terry comes in. So right now he is seated. So we definitely have quorum.
Terry's here. Madam Chair, I'm seeing Mr. Miller on the call, just to be clear.
Oh, okay. Well, he wasn't here at first. So, so Mr. Miller is here. So Terry is seated, and Mr. Ham is also. Actually, they're both seated right now because both Shane and Kalish are not here right now. So both of our alternates are seated. Oh, Shane says that he's on the meeting because I. Okay, anyways, right now we've got both of our alternates seated until somebody else comes on. So the next thing, so that's the roll call. And the next thing on the agenda is public comment, which I assumed would be 2 minutes per person. And I was going to ask if Mr. Lima, because he loves to do this, could take the time or be the timekeeper. But before we do that, I'd like Ms. Christopher, who is the chair of the convention committee, has asked that she speak first during public comment. And I'd like to give her latitude to speak a bit longer than the 2 minutes because she might have more to say. She says she has probably 3 or 4 minutes. So if there's no objection to that, I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Christopher first. Is there any objection to that?
No, but Shane Strawn just logged in for your.
Okay, so Mr. Strawn is now seated and Mr. Ham is not seated at this point because Terry is there. So, okay, so we've got all 15 members accounted for essentially. And again, if I didn't hear any objections, so Ms. Christopher.
5 minutes.
Please.
Thank you. Hi.
Just let her go as long as she needs for this particular thing because there's a lot
Sounds
going on.
good.
That's very kind of you, and I appreciate it. I hope I don't take longer than 5. I hope I don't take longer than 3. It's pretty simple, really. So when I first took this on, I went to the DoubleTree immediately with Mr. Strawn. He and I, we went and we toured the campus and we saw basically everything you guys saw when you just recently went to your XCOM meeting. We were aware that there were construction difficulties that could take place that could potentially run late. And when we found out that there wasn't a promise that it would be done in time, and they couldn't promise that it would be even a standard that would even hold a convention, I was concerned. So I tried to keep tabs here and there, like, how's the progress going? Oh, labor shortage. It's going longer than we anticipated. Okay, thanks for keeping me updated. And I was really thinking, okay, well, we'll let the executive committee, when they stay there, we'll let them experience it, and then they can make a decision and they can report back to me, like, how was it really? Like, when you really stayed there, how was it really, you know? And I got a lot of complaints. I got so many complaints that I started to get a little scared, because I thought, you know, I asked I asked every speaker to waive their speaking fees as a gift to us, and in kind, we would treat them really nice, you know, and they'd have a good time, and we'd all have a great time. And I thought, man, I can't ask my speakers to come and stay in a place where I would be uncomfortable, and I would feel personally embarrassed if I were holding a party of my own there. So I thought, well, it's almost too late, but it's not too late yet. If we could do something, what could we do? And if it's possible, we should try. That way, if this convention is a total disaster, then everybody's going to come to me and I can say, hey, I tried. There was nothing else, but I wanted to be able to say I tried, you know, due diligence. I spoke with Miss Janine Kent and Emily Tilford. Janine had a great idea. She says, I was at a big event recently at the Embassy Suites in Sacramento. It's centrally located. It's really nice. It's not much more expensive than an average, you know, middle-ranged hotel in the area. And it's really nice. They just updated it. Everyone had a great time. It was nice. You should check it out. So I did. And they incredibly, like a Hail Mary, threw the ball. They caught it. They said, yeah, somebody just canceled theirs and we do have it available. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, let's find out more. So how much is the room per night? You're probably asking, and it's a little bit more. I'm not going to mince words. It is a little bit more. How much more? Let's see. I'm pulling up some figures here. The room per night is $139 versus $229. So it's $90 more. That's a lot of money, you're saying, if you're saying that at all, because expensive means different things to different people. So if $90 is a lot to you, I would like to tell you how we have planned to offset those costs by the amenities provided to you at the convention site. So it's my opinion that your means of wealth should not determine your access to our speakers. And because I think our speakers should be heard by everybody. And I'm sure you do too. So if you can't afford currently to pay for a speaker's package for breakfast and lunch, you don't get access. Now, if you were at the DoubleTree, not only would you not get access to those speakers, but they don't have enough room to feasibly feed everyone at the same time and get everyone fed for breakfast. She says it's not going well. We've given everybody their money back. The lady from the DoubleTree, she says we're happy to give you your money back. It would not be a good place for you to be at that time with us. She admitted it. So if you were at the DoubleTree, you would have to leave the premises. You'd have to get in your car. You'd have to drive across the street to the mall. You'd have to find parking. You'd have to go into the mall, and then you'd have to get in line and find breakfast, hopefully get a seat somewhere, hopefully be able to pick up a muffin or something. And then you'd have to come back and hope that you're able to make it back in time for party business. That does not sound fun, and I don't want people to have that experience. So if you're at the DoubleTree and you don't have the money for the convention package with the speakers, there's great news. You get a free, really nice continental style breakfast that's like a hot breakfast. You get that as a complimentary gift from the hotel. And someone begged the question, well, doesn't that compete with people who buy the speakers packages? And I say, if you think libertarians are coming to the convention for the breakfast, then I don't think that's true. So I don't think that a free breakfast is ever going to compete with the ability to see speakers that you admire and you respect and you want their ideas. So here's another benefit for the people who can afford to eat with the speakers but would like to hear the message. The breakfasts and the lunches are on an atrium area. And if you eat your breakfast for free and you walk upstairs one flight, there's a balcony, you can hear the message loud and clear for free and no one's going to stop you. And in fact, I encourage anyone to go up there and listen to the speakers. I mean, it's a message that I think everyone should hear. So that's benefit number one. That offsets your costs, free breakfast and the speaker. That's a nice gift to the people who would otherwise complain about the added expense. Now, you would say, okay, well, what about the parking situation, Gia? And I'm like, yeah, they have valet parking. Isn't that nice? It's $35 a day. You don't have to use valet parking. If you would like to walk a block, you can walk a block up the road and use the public parking for $15 a day. If that's still too expensive, you can go a couple blocks up the street until there's a park and ride. You can park your car for free, and then you can take the bus down and get dropped right off at the convention. And that's, the cost of a bus ticket. A city bus ticket, it's like $2. So many options. It's just what type of conveniences would you like to buy for yourself? But here's the best part. Okay, so we are going to be having, if you approve it, we're going to be having our gala auction in in the room where we do party business. And I had it moved in there because that way we can have Larry Sharp be loud, and we can have him go for a lot longer, and we can have more people getting really excited to spend money and buy things that benefit the candidate support and the party as a whole. I'd like to get a lot more new lifetime members, and I'm really hoping that when people are comfortable and happy and well fed and well cared for, I'm hopeful that they are more generous with their money. So that being said, our initially we were planning to have the gala at around like 6. And I said, no, let's have it a little bit past 7, because between 5 and 7, the DoubleTree doesn't offer this. They charge around $15 per beer. But the embassy, they told us, we offer our guests complimentary wine, beer, and spirits to our guests for free between 5 and 7. And I said, nope, bad idea. You're going to regret that. You don't know who we are. You think Emily and I can't, we can not hold our liquor, but you haven't seen the rest of our friends, and you're going to regret that decision. And he says, you're never going to drink as much as the parachutist. So bring it on. Show us what you got. And I said, all right, because if you add up the total cost of an adult beverage at a hotel, it's with taxes. So like say a beer is $12, and with tax and tip, you're at about 15. If you're an average libertarian, you have somewhere between 4 and 7 a day. So I mean, I'm just getting a little bit between 2 and 4, very realistically, of beverages. So that's easily $60 a day in savings just in the evening, where you would have a nice, relaxing cocktail with your friends for free. And it's just an overall really relaxing experience. Now, about the rooms, it's $100 more. Yes, it is. But let me tell you something. Each room is a suite. So each room has a bedroom and a living room with a couch that pulls out into a full double bed. So realistically, if you were on a savings and you said, I'm a couple, we don't have a lot of money, let's find 2 other couples and we'll share one room. Each couple gets a bed. You could literally share one room to 3 couples and split that to, what is it? What do we got here? $229 and 2/3. That's a pretty nice savings. If you are a single person, you can fit 6 people into a room, right? Each person gets to split that $229 room into 6. That's a huge savings, and it's comfortable. And I will tell you this, I saw the rooms. They were all updated last year. They're very top of the line, very nice. It is a very affordable, luxurious experience. And if I'm going to welcome you to my area, I'd like to be able to show you the best of what we have. And I would really like to be able to show my local Placer County and Sacramento County. We'd like to be proud of the experience that we give you, and we would be proud of this experience. However, we would not be proud of the DoubleTree, not as it is right now. I'm not saying it's ruled out for the future, but as it stands right now, the sales staff has admitted, yeah, we're happy to give you your money back. It's not in an acceptable condition. And so that is my case to you today. Please vote to let us have a nice convention. Thank you, guys. Oh, is there any questions? Are there any questions?
When I go to bed, let me know, okay?
What?
Well, actually, we're not at questions yet.
no questions?
I will let people field questions to you, but right now we're still at public comments. So
Okay.
I'd like to do that.
Actually,
first.
if Miss Christopher could just address one big thing in the room, could you talk about the contract we just found out today officially from the
Oh yeah,
DoubleTree?
we're officially as of, so when we wouldn't have known about the contract until the main boss, the big main boss has to sign it off, and he did it. He signed it off. We are free and clear. We don't know a deposit. There's no penalty. There's absolutely no repercussions. And there's even an ask that they look forward to having us in the future. And why not? They were so accommodating and easy to deal with that the DoubleTree would be a great place to do party business in the future. Absolutely. So there is no risk of any losses to the party at all. And yeah, free and clear.
Yes, and I actually was going to say that because I initiated an email today, which I got a response from Stacy, who got the response from Royce, who I had spoken to as well. And in fact, they will allow us to get out of the contract completely, and they will even refund us our $500 deposit. So there is no ramifications for leaving that contractually. So that is absolutely good news.
I'm so sorry, I forgot to show you. So there was previously someone said, well, how can we fit all those people into the Embassy Suites? Isn't it cramped? And I went in there, and Emily Tilford and we had a lovely day. We went down and visited, and this is, I'm not sure if you can see, and you can look it up online. I'm sure that they haven't, or I can send it to anybody who wants it. So this is what the very room where we will be in, and it fits. Emily, do you remember how many people it fits with this mock-up as it is? I'm not sure if I remember the exact number. But it's well over
144 with that particular setup.
No,
and I've counted the glasses.
No.
It's 144.
Okay, yes, but you don't see that it wraps around the sides actually. So Emily, if you were there, do you remember? So there are two little, not too little. There are two projection screens that show basically whatever it is that is important enough to see. The stage is right here, it's a little elevated. So you have the rows of seating this way. What you can't see is that this is actually like this long. It's ridiculously long. It's way longer than I thought it was an awkward shape when I saw it empty, but then he said, if you can't visualize it, let's just start moving furniture and you can see it for yourself. So these tables, they're very nice tables with marble. They're very heavy, so you don't have to worry about like knocking them over if you're coming in and out, but they're very narrow too. So you can squeeze more people this way. Now, in these corners back here, which you can't really see, are the availability to take those chairs out and put just seats. How many people at the last two conventions I was at actually utilized their ability to sit all day? Since we have a younger group of people, I've noticed that a lot of the activity where people would normally sit, they're kind of moving around towards the back, and that's what they're naturally doing. So I think it would be conducive to have more of that stadium type seating back here without a table. That way they're more free to walk around and they're not in anybody's way in the door area. And then also, if you're noticing, there are these two lines right here, and that would be for the two microphones, and that would also keep the flow of traffic moving very smoothly. And Emily and we felt very confident that this is a really great space, actually, better than I could have imagined, really, when I kind of put myself in it and I practiced walking and I practiced bumping into things, and I have no pride, so I made a fool of myself in order to make sure that you guys didn't, and it's perfect. So if you trust me on this, I promise I will deliver you a really great convention if you choose the Embassy Suites. If you have any additional questions, happy to answer them. Also, my friend Adrian, he has done an incredible job with helping me throughout this process. He also has all the information that I have, and he'd be happy to share it with you as well. Thank you very much for your time, and thanks for letting me host you in Sacramento. And I really hope that we have a great convention together. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all that, and I think that was very good information. When we get past the public comment and we start actually talking, there may be questions for you. I don't know, but you'll be given another opportunity. That was a little bit longer than I had anticipated, but that's okay. So we do have a couple hands raised. We are at public comments. Right now we only have 2 hands raised. So I will first go to the first one that I saw, which is Wendy Hewitt. Wendy Hewitt, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, it sounds great. Thank you, Gia, for doing all that work. One of the concerns I had, somebody had mentioned on the Facebook thread that we have, per our bylaws, we have to have a 90-day, is that going to be good enough if we switch this over? Or
if you're asking questions, I will answer those when we start the meeting, because I do have some answers for that, but
That was
you know,
one of
right
my,
now it's just public comment, and it's not 90 days, it's actually 120 per our bylaws,
okay.
but yeah, we're gonna have to get there because that's a thing.
Yeah, and I just had some concerns about how much the rooms were actually, because I know that some people, you know, can't make some of those conventions where even the rooms are $129. So I was hoping that she could elaborate on other hotels in the area. I noticed that Elizabeth Stump actually said there was a Holiday Inn, but I was hoping maybe there was a few others in the area that people could stay at. And so that was just my concerns.
Can I answer that right now? The double.
I would prefer to,
Okay,
well,
sorry.
yeah,
There's
go
questions.
ahead. I would prefer to finish public comment and then go
Okay.
back to it, but if you'd like to answer the question about the other hotels, that would be fine.
So this location of the it's centrally located in Sacramento, and it's actually, turns out it's one of the busiest weekends in the Sacramento area is what we found out. And so the fact that we were able to do this at short notice is insane. However, if you're not willing to, if you're willing to make a little bit extra of a drive and you really want to stay at the DoubleTree, they have a lot more rooms available but they're not that nice, but they're available. But the DoubleTree is available, and it is probably less than a 6 to 8 minute drive depending on traffic. So and they have all free parking and all of those things people do like about a DoubleTree, but they might not be available at that time. Oh, and Emily just actually says that it is 170 people can fit into the seating for the main conference room for party business.
We are at time for Miss Hewitt's question.
Thank you.
Okay, and yeah, and as far as that goes, that incorporated some theater seating, but I think that's, I'm just going to interject really quickly. Last year, 2022, we had a lot of delegates, more than we've had in the past, and I believe probably a lot more than we're going to have this year. So I don't know that the issue of the space, I mean, it is a smaller space than we've had in the past. I'm not as concerned about the space. I think that we can make that work, and if we can't, we can have an overflow room. But you know, when it comes right down to it, we can lay it out. They have not given us actual dimensions, but we can lay it out the way that we always do. So I'm not as concerned about the meeting space as it is, because I think that we can make that work. So I'm just going to say that now, just to, you know, whether it's 144, whether it's 170, whether it incorporates theater seating, I think we can actually make that work. So anyways, the next hand that I see is Alicia Purcell. Do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself for public comment?
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. I actually wanted to weigh in on the very thing that that Wendy was speaking about. It's if you need to take a look, it's LP California bylaw 19.2, which starts out saying the XCOM sets the time, place, and schedule, but it also requires that the membership be given 120 days notice of the arrangements, and that would of course include the place. We're only, what, 46 days out from the first day of business here. So it's literally impossible at this point to give 120 days notice. And this is a bylaw requirement. It's not something that can be suspended by anyone, much less the XCOM. And when I look at the situation, I'm of the opinion that it would be a bylaw violation for the XCOM to take up a motion to change it at this late date, given that we're well under 120 days. You know, even if the original location had burned down or something dramatic had happened to it, right? We'd still need the convention to call to order on that property and then adjourn to a less burned location. That's how you handle emergency situations that require you to move because, you know, you have no choice in the matter. But you still need to call to order at the other location and then adjourn to a different location. I'm concerned that, you know, if the board just decides to violate the bylaws anyway, we have a potential mess on our hands. You know, if some members go to the original location and proceed with the agenda, they could have a claim of legitimacy. And if they adjourn to a different location, other than the one the board chooses, they could actually do that. You know, so I think there's potential
You're at
problems.
time. Madam Chair. Mr. Vice Chair.
Oh,
I see
sorry, I
Mr.
was muted. That was my bad. I apologize for that. I had muted myself. Okay, so thank you, Ms. Purcell. We will, and that is something that is going to come up. And I know that I've found references on Robert's Rules of Order website on that, and I was going to bring that up when we got to that part of business. But thank you very much for chiming in with that. And the next person with their hand up is Mr. Brown, our parliamentarian. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did not raise my hand initially. I have the same concern that Alicia does. I was going to wait until this came up, or wait until I was called on, or if somebody made a point of order. But since Ms. Purcell did raise the issue, she is correct. You have a bylaws problem, because your bylaws very clearly require 4 months advance notice. And if you try to change it at this point, you're violating your bylaws. All of the things that Alicia mentioned could happen. And you at a minimum should have some people at the DoubleTree at the time the convention is supposed to start to basically move to set an adjourned meeting, to move the location from the DoubleTree to the embassy suites or whatever. But it's a definite issue, because this is something, it's a rule you cannot suspend, you cannot waive it. If members somehow complain about it or raise an issue or want to file a lawsuit, you've got an issue on your hands. But I just wanted to concur with Alicia that the motion to change the venue would be out of order, and it does violate the bylaws.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Brown. I see additional hands raised. Both of those that are raised are on the executive committee. So I wanted to just verify, did Mr. Lima and Mr. Butts want to speak during public comment, or do you have your hands raised for doing something after we've finished public comment?
Mine's for public comment, Madam Chair.
Okay, Mr. Lima, go ahead.
I just want to say Victoria and I got a room at that hotel at the last XCOM meeting, and we left the same night. We didn't want to stay. I was very unimpressed with the hotel. We had to walk in the rain because that's the only way to get to like the convention area. It was extremely far. It's unrenovated. It was so bad that we were willing to wash $156 or whatever we paid for that one night. We just left and checked out. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Butts, you have your hand raised. Did you want to speak during public comment, or was it raised for when we start business?
It could be saved for regular discussion.
Well, it's up to you. I mean, I'm giving you the option.
Well, do we know how many people have booked at the DoubleTree?
We do.
Okay. Yeah. Well, how do we know? Like, can you give me a number?
Yeah, there's 26 people that have booked rooms, and the total number of room nights that have been booked is, I believe, 50, almost 60. I'd have to look at that. We have the list of who has booked rooms, and we also have people have booked, different amounts of nights and things like that. So, yeah, it was 26 people, and if you give me one moment, I can tell you how many people have booked each night. So, there have been a total of 20, 38, 48, 52. There have been 52 rooms booked for, you know, the total number of, for all of the nights, and that is 26 people. And that doesn't count any of the rooms that we've, you know, pre-booked for our speakers or anything. Those are just people that have booked rooms.
So if we were to move to the Embassy Suites, my main concern are those members. I hope we can get an email to them, maybe even a written letter apologizing to them for the inconvenience and explaining to them the process of getting their refund, and maybe prioritizing them to getting a room at the Embassy Suites. You know, making sure that they do get a
Mr.
room
Butts
at
is
the
at
Embassy
time.
Suite if they want it. All right.
Okay, Mr. Butts, you're at time, and I'll just let you know that the convention committee discussed this, and they plan, if we do this, to actually make phone calls to those individuals. And as far as prioritizing rooms, we have if we do move, we have a room block that they can book at the Embassy Suites, and there is no cancellation charge for canceling your room until, I believe it's 48 hours prior to your check-in time. So nobody has actually paid any money for those rooms yet. They've just simply booked them.
Thank you.
Okay, so I do see that the next hand raised is Mr. Maligan, followed by Mr. Hinkle, followed by Mr. Minnelletti. Mr. Maligan, did you want to speak during public comment, or was this something for once we start party business?
During public comment, I'd just rather address this now, Madam Chair, if it's all right with you.
Oh, that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to check. So,
Of course.
Mr. Maligan, go ahead.
So I'll just go ahead and read section 2 of, so bylaw 19 convention section 2. The executive committee shall be responsible for setting the time, place, and schedule of events for the convention. The executive committee shall provide to the membership at least 120 days advance notice concerning these arrangements. Place is ambiguous. Place is Sacramento. Place could be the hotel itself. Place could be the specific room that we're in. That would be up for the judicial committee to decide, should someone want to be that person. There are very clearly a lot of people. You know, I understand that procedure is there for a reason, but this is something that is ambiguous. I respect Mr. Brown's opinion and Ms. Purcell's opinion regarding this matter, but this would be something to the judicial committee, for the judicial committee to decide, should they decide to take this up. I'm not really concerned with the legitimacy of that. I think people will see that, you know, this was something that was done from necessity, not for any other reason. We're talking about a location that's maybe a quarter of a mile to half a mile max from the initial location. I'll also say that part of that, again, I will read, is a schedule of events for convention. We don't have a schedule of events, and that's seldom given. I don't think, at least I've only been to 2 conventions myself. I have never seen a schedule given 120 days advance. So that would kind of delegitimize, in my opinion, every other convention. I could be wrong, but I don't believe that a schedule has ever been released 120 days prior. So that is part of these arrangements, as section 2 in bylaw 19 seems to suggest. Of course, the judicial committee can take that up. I'm not a parliamentarian. I'm not an expert on RONAR, but just a cursory reading of that suggests that would be the case. So that's it. That's all I'll say to address that, and I will yield the rest of my time.
Okay, and just a real quick note, schedule events is our agenda. That's the only party business. That is part of our convention rules, so that is always the same. So the schedule events is in fact part of our convention rules, and that is part of the call of the meeting. It's not who's speaking when and who's having breakfast. It's the schedule of the convention itself. But again, when we get to this part of it, we can discuss that further. And we have had other parliamentarians weigh in on this, like Karen Ann Harless and JJ, but we can get to that after the fact, when we get to the actual business of the meeting. The next hand up is Mr. Hinkle. If you'd like to unmute yourself and speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what if we were to give 120 days? I think that was the right number. And is the embassy suite available in 120 days if we give notice? In other words, could we move the date back to April or whenever the requested date and time might be. Satisfy the bylaws. Any thoughts on that?
It's a good thought, Mr. Hinkle.
I don't know of anybody that has suggested changing the time and date of the convention. I believe that they're only looking at changing the place of the convention. So I don't know that anybody has an answer for you on that, because I don't think that that's been a situation that's even been discussed. And actually, and I would, being that this is somewhat of a question, I would like to ask either Ms. Purcell or Mr. Brown, would that be something that could be done that would be parliamentarily in order to postpone for 120 days, or would that still be an issue? Because I don't even know the answer to that off the top of my head. Mr. Brown?
Yep, yes,
Or
ma'am.
Ms. Purcell?
That would be permissible.
I
To
agree.
reschedule.
Okay.
I throw it out there for your
Okay.
consideration.
Okay, well, that is a good point to be made, and although that has not been something that's been suggested by the convention committee at this point, their suggestion is to have it the same weekend, which is in approximately 6 weeks, but just at a different location. So, but that was a good point to bring up, because I hadn't even thought of it, and I didn't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. Okay, so
Well, that's why you keep old chairs around.
That's right, Mr. Hinkle. That's right.
Okay, so is there, I do see another hand up for public comment. Mr. Bowers, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, I'll just say I'm glad I joined the call as the current chair of the Judicial Committee, and I'll yield my time back.
We're glad to have you.
We are absolutely glad to have you. And thank you for that. I guess in case it goes to the Judicial Committee. Okay, I do not see any other hands up except for Mr. Bowers' hand is still up, but I think that's a legacy. So that will bring us to the end of public comment, unless anybody else wants to get in here real quick, which I'm not seeing. So that will then bring us to the call of the meeting, which is to discuss and take action regarding the 2023 convention. So I think we've already had like some discussion on this, and being that it's been brought up a couple times, I will say that it seems to be the opinion of several parliamentarians that this would in fact be out of order to change the location at this late date, and location typically is a physical location, not a city, but I do understand your point, Mr. Malagon. I think some of the concerns would be that if we in fact change the location, have the convention, somebody after the fact could come back and say that nothing that we did actually happened because we weren't in the right place and time. The parliamentarians that have weighed in on the forum that I found are Josh Martin, who I believe is one of the authors of RONAR, Karen Ann Harlos, the LNC secretary, Josh Martin again, and JJ, who is been, very involved in the LNC of late. And they've all basically said that it would be in order to change the location ahead of the meeting if it is possible to call the meeting to order at the contracted location and adjourn to another location, which I suppose could be done. But I'm just putting this out here because I think that the motion to move it on its face is in fact out of order. However, before we even get there, I will let you know that if I will likely call it out of order because of that. However, you are more than welcome to appeal my ruling, and I will allow that because I think that there is enough ambiguity somewhat, although I think that we should probably discuss having somebody at the other location first thing in the morning to do the thing that the parliamentarians are suggesting if we do this, because we haven't even gotten there. but just heads up, if the motion is made, I will call it out of order and somebody can appeal my ruling, which would then take a simple majority vote to overturn my ruling.
Madam Chair.
So that being said, Mr. Edgar, go ahead.
Point of parliamentary inquiry. I wanted to ask if the motion were to cancel the contract with the existing hotel, with the DoubleTree, and then to adopt the contract with the Embassy Suites, would that also be out of order? It strikes me that it would not, because that would not be the equivalent of changing the location of the convention. And
no,
then
it would be out of order. I can answer that. It would be out of order because you're changing, however you do it, whether it's cancel one contract. And by the way, contracts are something that are not even recognized in RONAR at this point. They stopped that, I think, as of the 10th edition, because they don't like to get involved in things like contracts. But it's that notice needs to be given to the membership of the location of the meeting per our bylaws 120 days in advance. That's the part. It has nothing to do with contractual obligations. It has to do with the actual location.
Yes,
So,
and so sorry, go ahead. I just
so
wanted
that is the part. It has nothing to do with the contract. It has to do with changing the location. So canceling a contract and adopting another contract has the ultimate effect of changing the location of the convention. And so that's the part that would be out of order. Again, this can be appealed, and I will allow that appeal, although I think we should talk about what the parliamentarians are suggesting, which is to call to order and then adjourn to the other location, if in fact the ExCom chooses to do that thing, because we haven't gotten there, but I'm just giving the heads up to that.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah, to answer your question, it's still moving. It's still moving the location less than 120 days prior to the convention.
Even if we were just talking about a cancellation of the contract and adoption of the new one, and not an official change in the notice of the location. So in other words, what I'm asking is, could you do this shift in the contracts that I'm contemplating and continue?
Oh, got it. Okay,
not change
now
the
I understand your question.
Yeah.
Now I understand your question. So as far as the contracts go, if we do the thing that we're, that the parliamentarians are suggesting, we would have somebody, I mean, this came up at the 2020 National Convention. We could essentially have somebody standing in the parking lot to do the thing that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So that won't affect, in my opinion, and I'm going to actually defer to the parliamentarians after I say this, just to make sure I'm right. I don't think that would affect motions regarding contracts, because again, RONAR doesn't talk about contracts, and neither does our bylaws. Especially if what you're suggesting is not changing the fact that we do the other thing that was being talked about.
Yes, that would, changing the contract would be consistent with that. In other words, so that's yes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Okay, and I'm going to let Mr. Brown just chime in just to make sure, because he's not only a parliamentarian, he's also an attorney. So, and I'm not.
Right.
So yes,
I am changing to respond directly to Mr. Edgar. RONR does not prohibit canceling the contract. It used to. They actually changed that with the 9th edition 20 years ago. And so from a parliamentary standpoint, you can cancel or rescind the contract and suffer whatever legal consequences might come. From a parliamentary standpoint, you can do it. The parliamentary issue is that it violates the bylaws because of having to give 120 days notice of the date, time, and place. And I think all parliamentarians would say for a convention or almost anything else, place includes the actual establishment, and especially where one hotel costs $100 a night more than the other hotel. That's the issue. But as far as canceling the contract from a parliamentary standpoint, you can do that.
Thank you. So you concur with what I said, basically.
Thank you.
Okay, and I see hands raised. So the next hand raised is Mr. Alstead.
Oh, hi. Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering, you mentioned that you sought out other forums to get their Roner opinion on this. I was just wondering if you could put a link.
Oh,
to
sure. And
those
I
discussions.
didn't, oh, absolutely. And I didn't seek it out. I'm not the one that posted on it. I found a thread on this that somebody had started, and that's what I'm referring to. I can post the link to it in the chat.
Good, thank you.
I could also share my screen if anybody would like to see it, but it just
In fact-
happens that this is completely on point. Although in this particular case, it was, I believe, 90 days notice, and ours is 120 days notice. And there's some other nuances, but for the most part.
Madam Chair, if I could add, I saw that thread after a couple of people had already answered the question. I do agree with their answers. I did not add my answer because I usually don't. Once a question has been properly answered, most of us leave it alone. So I did not weigh in, but I do agree with the answers.
Okay, and I just posted it in the chat. Would anybody like me to share my screen, or is the chat sufficient? Okay, I'm hearing nobody ask me to share my screen, so I'm assuming that means chat is sufficient. So then, and were you done, Mr. Alstad? Okay, your hand was still up.
Yes,
so
I
just
was.
wanted to
Thank
make
you.
sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, the next hand up is Mr. Minoletti. Mr.
Yes.
Minoletti?
I'm here. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering, I know a lot of people have spoken on the condition of the DoubleTree Hotel. I'm wondering what the timeline was. Obviously, the the meeting on December 10th was a big thing, but I'm wondering what the timeline was for everyone to decide that we should consider another property for our convention, because I think that's a pretty big deal to make that change. And I share a lot of the concerns. I was there for the executive committee meeting, and I share some of those concerns, but I'm wondering how that all worked out and when people decided that we should start examining, moving the convention to another hotel. And that's obviously a very open-ended question to whoever wants to answer it.
I guess right now. It's kind of when we're deciding to change it.
Sorry?
Okay, so that was kind of, well, you said it was an open-ended question. I think Mr. Lima said that right now is when we're deciding. I think if I understand the question, he's just saying, when did the discussion start? But I don't know. I mean, I don't have an answer to that. So,
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're in discussion or public comment right now, so I could not also give an answer for that.
Yeah, it seems like that was something for discussion, but Ms. Christopher already made it clear that after people had complained, that's when she had started looking at other options. So that was already answered. I'm kind of confused by the question.
So is that like,
okay, and
is
to
there
answer a
date?
question about where we're at right now, because you just said, are we still in public comment? Public comment is over. We are now at the call of the meeting. And the call of the meeting was to discuss and take action on anything regarding the 2023 LPCA convention, including but not limited to canceling our current venue and adopting a new one. That is where we're at. We don't have a motion on the table, but being that the call of the meeting was to discuss, I believe that we're in discussion at this point. And
so Mr.
so right
Minoletti,
now,
we're
what's
in
in
discussion
order is
now.
for people, right, we're in discussion now on that. And right now it's people on the XCOM raising their hands with, with questions, concerns regarding the discussion. So I'm kind of confused. We are in the call of the meeting now. We are in discussion of this agenda item.
I think at the end of the day, it's all about compromise.
Okay. Okay. First thing is, so Mr. Minoletti, are you done with what you had to say? Because the next hand up is Mr. Butt.
No, I think
But
there's a
first,
little,
Mr.
maybe a little confusion around what I asked. My question was, I think a lot of people that are on the call right now were at the meeting on December 10th. And so I'm wondering, like, when did this process start? When we started reconsidering a new venue, because I'm a member of the executive committee and a member of the convention committee. And I hadn't heard anything about reconsidering until December 26th. And when I was made aware of that at that time, it was very clear that a number of the members were already obviously discussing this, and there was a contract ready at that point. So I'm wondering if any of the people that are commenting on the status, and again, I share some of the concerns about the DoubleTree, but I'm of the opinion that a lot of this was done and people were excluded from the process. I'm being one of them. So I'm curious when all this process started between December 10th and December 26th or 27th, when I found out about the new contract and the possibility of all this changing. What happened between that time?
Okay, so the only thing, I mean, I'll leave it to others to answer. The only thing I can tell you
You
is
want to
that,
answer for me, even though we spoke about this yesterday? I can tell you again, and I can tell if you're asking it so other people can understand, I'd be happy to explain.
okay, well, I was just going to say if somebody else, so as far as my first notice of this, it was on December 24th. But yes, Ms. Christopher, if you'd like to answer that question regarding when the discussions amongst people on this started, that would be fabulous.
Yes, no problem. Thank you for the opportunity to explain this. A week after I accepted the position from the board as the chair of this committee, less than a week, Mr. Strawn and I visited the venue. We toured the facilities, and we could see right away that we were most likely going to have some problems. And considering that there was going to be a labor shortage and a lumber shortage and all of these other shortages, the odds were not in our favor that we were going to have a convention here that would be of any kind of quality by February 18th. And so I actually broached the subject with Madam Chair, Mimi. Initially, I said, I have concerns that this place is not going to be ready. And I have pretty major concerns, because if it's not ready, it's going to be pretty bad. And it's not even going to be like, okay, it's going to be really bad. So I suggested actually in the first week that we not have the convention there. And that's all I have to say about that. I have actually also been touching base with the salespeople have changed hands over time, and there's different people have been associated with this project over time. They've also had their hotel facilities have had a huge turnover in staff, and so nobody also really ever really knew what was going on at any particular time, as they were brand new. So I could see the writing was on the wall from the very first day I took the job and visited the venue, and that's a fact. I couldn't do anything about it, and I didn't feel it was proper to even suggest such a thing until I knew for a fact that it wasn't going to be, but I didn't want to wait so long that we were stuck. So I didn't know about the 120 days or 140 days or whatever it was, but I don't even know that I would have been able to have a clear answer for you in that amount of time. Anyway, so that's the answer that I have, and I hope it's satisfactory.
Okay. Did that answer your question, Mr. Minoletti? Chris? Well, as far as, you know, those questions, I'll just say as far as the time order of this, the original person I dealt with was Angela Soul, and that was before I knew there was going to be construction at the hotel. And the original contract was started in February, finalized in March. And then I believe it was at the June ExCom meeting or around there, that the contract was finalized because we found out about the possible construction, which is, I believe, when Mr. Strawn and Ms. Christopher visited the site. And at that time, we were told that the first area that they were going to be renovating would be our area of our construction. And I work in construction, actually. I'm a structural engineer. I know things that can take longer. So the contract was revised to put in place contingencies because of the construction that wasn't in the original contract. And so that contract was finalized and signed in June. The original was in March. I think that what Chris was asking is when between the 10th and the 26th was this happening, but I'm not really sure, and he didn't chime in, so.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
that's actually what I was asking, and I didn't get back in time when you were asking. That was the question from the time that the executive committee met on December 10th, and
I believe
Just-
actually the day that I started looking into it, I had also found out, because I was about to call Mimi, and I had just found out from Emily that Mimi was in the hospital. And it was it was in the same, within a half an hour finding out that Mimi was in the hospital was when I decided to start looking at other venues, because I had found out that Mr. Lima, who in my opinion, is a wonderful man and judge of character, if it wasn't good
Thank
enough
you.
for him, it wasn't good enough for us. And so when I found out that he had rented the room and he didn't stay there, I was very concerned. So I said, okay, I have to get to the bottom of this. And I have to try to do what I can. That's my job. So everyone's comfort is my responsibility, and I took it seriously.
I'm tired of staying in places that don't have air conditioning.
Madam Chair,
Okay,
if I
the
may,
next-
I've had my hand raised.
I was just, we just finished Mr. Minnelli. I was just about to say Mr. Maligan.
So I'm just going to point out a couple of things here. As my colleagues on the XCOM will remember, as the chair just said, we did have a special session of the XCOM when the contract was to be revised in June. I pleaded with my colleagues to consider other venues. We still had time. This was back, I believe, in June. It could have been as late as July. I don't remember. But you know, we were assured by the chair and others that things would be fine. There were concerns then. We were able to pull off a miracle as far as being able to find this venue, being able to do this so that everyone is comfortable. If this doesn't constitute an emergency, I mean, we don't know what the weather is going to be like. It was absolutely awful when we went on December 10th. You know, the rain, the potential, like people possibly slipping. I mean, it may only be 40 or 50 feet to go from one place to another, but for people with mobility issues, this could be a problem. This doesn't constitute an emergency under RONAR. I don't really know what does at this point. We don't really need to be difficult about this. We've made time changes at the last minute when we've had to adjust to certain things when people weren't given proper notice. This happened in 2022 with an hour time change. We don't need to be difficult about this. And I implore my colleagues to join me in canceling the contract of the DoubleTree. Everything has been taken care of. There is nothing that needs to be, there's no concern as far as us getting our money back. There's no concern as far as liability legally. We don't need to worry about this. The hard part is done. I really do I think that we don't have to be this difficult about it. If Ms. Purcell and Mr. Brown's, well, I think it was Ms. Purcell in the chat that had some suggestions to make this a little bit easier. I think that the chair and the secretary would be more than amenable to, I don't want to speak for them, but to do something in the parking lot, get that done, and then move over to the embassy suites if we have to take care of some sort of technicalities to prevent anything moving forward to the judicial committee as far as anything that might be considered to be invalidated or whatever. We're making this a lot harder than we need to make it. And I think we should just, I mean, if everyone is done with discussion, I'd like to just make the motion to cancel one contract, adopt the other, and then figure out the logistical stuff. That seems, I mean, there seems to be a solution for that so that we can go ahead and move forward with this. I think, I mean, it is getting late for some people. This doesn't need to be this difficult, people. That's all I'll say.
Thank you, Mr. Malgon. And that's why I started with, I think that we can do that. I just wanted to make sure that we knew that this is something that could, you know, could come up later. So I think if we're going to do it, we should do it right, which would be what, like Ms. Purcell has suggested. This is the reason why I brought this up, to make sure that nothing we do is going to cause problems down the road as far as that part of it, right? to make sure that nobody can come back and say that our entire convention was invalid because of this notice issue. So that's why I brought it up, and that's why I researched it on the Roberts Forum. So I guess the question is, we're going to do this, I guess, maybe in parts, because we need to do, as far as I can tell, we need to do a couple things. We need to make a motion to cancel a contract. We need to make a motion to accept a contract. And then we need to make a motion to change the location of our convention. That part of it is the part that's at issue. And if we have a proviso that it would be called to order even in the parking lot, which is what I suggested when I said what happened in 2020, that was a suggestion, we could do that and then just adjourn it to the new location. So is that basically what you're saying? And does what I just said as far as the order of making these motions make sense?
Sure, we can go ahead and do that. Mr. Brown seems to want to speak. I'll defer to him before I make the first motion.
And actually, I will defer to him. Mr. Brown?
I was just going to say that I don't know that you need a proviso in it, but I think that what concerns Alicia and me, aside from the fact that technically it violates the bylaws, is that if you don't have somebody there to call the meeting to order or call the convention to order and then adjourn it to the other hotel, somebody else can show up, one or two people, call the convention to order and have a rump convention and do whatever they want to do. And that convention of those few people who show up at the DoubleTree, that will be the legal convention, at least from a parliamentary standpoint. I think that's our concern. And so at a minimum, I don't think it needs to be a proviso, but I'm interested in what Alicia has to say. But we should arrange for at least people to be at the DoubleTree, to go through the motions of calling the meeting to order and then adjourning it to the other hotel.
Thank you. And again, that's something that came up for the 2020 convention, and that's part of the reason why I started researching it, because people were talking about doing just that, starting a rump convention and not really having the convention of national, but having people in a parking lot have their own, their own everything. And that would be the one that's true, because they were actually in, they were in Austin, Texas, which is where the convention was called for. So that's why I think it's important we do this right. So Mr. Alvstead has his hand up, but before I go to Mr. Alvstead, I just want to go back to Mr. Malagon, because I believe Mr. Malagon was making a motion.
I would love to hear what Mr. Alvstead has to say, and then I will make my motion.
Okay, Mr. Alvstead.
Yeah, I just had a question, either for Alicia, for Mr. Purcell, or Mr. Brown. The requirement says schedule and place. Now, if you look up like the definition of schedule, there's no definition of schedule that doesn't also include times. Just a list, we're going to do things in this order, is not a schedule according to Webster's, according to Merriam-Webster dictionary, Oxford dictionary, etc. Whereas place could mean a population center. That is one of the definitions. There's several definitions of place, but that is one of them. So I just want to know why you think it's okay to be so fast and loose with the definition of schedule, but we have to be this super precision for the definition of place. Thank you.
Okay, would either Mr. Brown, or being that it was addressed to the two parliamentarians in the room, would Mr. Brown or Mr. Purcell or Ms. Purcell like to respond to that? Mr. Brown?
And if you,
Oh, okay.
Ms. Purcell, okay.
Yeah, I
Alicia's
see
hand is
Alicia
up,
has
so
her
Ms.
hand up.
Purcell. Okay, Ms. Purcell.
In a lot of instances under Roberts, you don't need specific times on agenda items. You don't have to set time limits, that sort of thing. You can just have a general order of business, and they take however long they take. And really the most important time that has to be there is just the starting time.
But the requirements are literally say the word schedule. I'm not making a Rona argument. I'm making a bylaws argument. Our bylaws say schedule.
And that's what an agenda is. It is a schedule of, when you're going to do, of what things are going to be done in what order, right? So that's already locked in our convention rules, I believe. So, that's well known long ahead of any given convention, what order they're going to be taken up. And then all we need to do is set a starting time for the meeting. And you just can't start before that time.
But a list of activities is not a schedule. I guess now I'm making a semantic argument at this point. Words have meanings, and this is what the word means.
In Ronar, a schedule is the agenda, and our agenda is in our convention rules. So we do have a schedule because it's our agenda. That's
so the definition of the word is different in Ronar than it is in the English language.
Very possibly. A lot of things in Ronar are slightly different than,
even the acronym Ronar doesn't make sense.
Well, actually, most parliamentarians do not like calling it Ronar. They like RONR.
Well, assuming we're done, Mr. Alvstad's argument is that all words matter, and that's I agree with that. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion now that Mr. Alvstad has asked his question.
I had my hand up as well.
Okay. All right. Well, let me ask this. So Mr. Maligon's hand was up and he started to make a motion. He acquiesced to Mr. Alvstad. I will ask Mr. Maligon, do you want to make your motion, or do you want to actually let Ms. Tewksbury speak before you finish making your motion that you started making?
I would like to make my motion. I adore Ms. Tewksbury, but I think we need to get moving along with this. People are getting very antsy and it's getting late. So I will go ahead and move that we
I was just
cancel
trying
the
to not
contract.
interrupt everybody else who's speaking. That's fine. Most polite. I don't get to speak now.
No, you can speak as soon as, well, he was
we
making
can
a
get
motion
we have three
before.
motions to go through, so I'd like to make the motion and then we can go ahead, and Ms. Tewksbury is welcome to speak after
That's
that. But
fine.
if we prolong this
That's
further, then
perfectly fine. I'm not prolonging anything. I mean, other people got to speak. I was politely waiting my turn. Guess I don't get one.
Your hand was up after his, but let's just do this thing. Mr. Maligon, please make your first motion. Once it's made, we can have a second. Once it's seconded, we can go to discussion. And the very first person that I'm going to call on is Ms. Tewksbury.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we cancel the current contract that we have with the DoubleTree.
I second it enthusiastically.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Maligon, seconded by Mr. Lima to cancel the contract with the DoubleTree. We will now go to discussion, and the first person whose hand was raised was Ms. Tewksbury. Ms. Tewksbury.
Thank you, Mimi. So prior to finding out today that the contract has been canceled by the hotel, I had concerns with the contract. I used to work for an attorney and I used to have fun going through contracts at that job, and it's kind of coming back to me. There are a lot of things that's obviously not an issue now, so I'll skip all of that. But I do agree with Mr. Alvstad saying, each word has a meaning. I completely 1,000,000% agree. The word place has a meaning. And when I looked it up just now, it says particular. And I can't imagine that that means the city of Sacramento. My concern is that this will get overturned if we hold the convention. We change it, with this motion or these three motions, apparently. It's hard to keep track of all the, back and forth on it. But my concern is that if we make this change, it'll be a very easy case for anybody who wants to overturn anything that we, any business that happens. I don't want to see that happen. I think that would just be a waste of a lot of people's time and everything. So for that reason, I think that it would be better to move this 4 months out, 120 days plus however long it actually takes to get them together to make the notice. So that's one of my points. I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. Okay. So I take it that you're speaking against the motion, but thank you for that. I really do appreciate that. My earbuds are dying. Okay. So the next hand, well, actually, I see no further hands up at this point other than Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, is that a legacy or do you have something to say?
No, I just wanted to add to the answer the question somebody asked a few minutes ago when Alicia started responding. He asked about place. Place has to include the actual physical location of the meeting so that the members know where to show up. That's the whole point of giving notice. So saying that it's in Sacramento simply is not sufficient. The place has to include the venue. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I do tend to agree with that. I believe that saying that the place is Sacramento means that people could be wandering the streets aimlessly for hours or something like that. So I do tend to agree with that. I see Ms. Young's hand up. And Ms. Tewksbury, you were done, correct? I see your hand is still up, but I think that's a legacy, correct?
Yes, I apologize. I'm not used to holding my hand up in Zoom, so I will put it down.
No worries. I just wanted to make sure. So Ms. Young?
I share the same sentiments as Jessica. I don't think there's a question of us wanting to move it. I think most everybody wants to move it. We all get that part. We all understand it. I think I'm really concerned about the bylaws part. And I also support moving it the 120 days. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I don't see any other hands up. Is there any further discussion on the motion to cancel the contract? This is, I believe, and actually I'm going to ask the parliamentarians this question. I believe that this requires 10 votes because it is a contract and it has to do with our budget, although I could be wrong on that. So I'm going to ask the opinion of the parliamentarians what the vote threshold is for this.
I think because you gave previous notice, I think it would be a majority vote on this. I think the previous notice included canceling the contract, changing the venue, etc. Is that what you're asking?
Isn't there a particular California bylaw which says, I'm trying to grasp the words. I have to go look it up, that 2/3 if you're going to exceed various, or for amending the budget or.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the 2/3 vote requirement, and it's the annual budget or any financial liability or contractual obligation lasting more than 3 months. I believe that being that this is for our annual convention, it's a contract that lasts more than 3 months. So I believe that that means it takes 10 votes. But my question is, canceling a contract is not necessarily a financial liability, but it is a contractual obligation. So my question is, does that meet the requirement of needing 2/3? I believe that the next motion, which would be to accept the contract for the new venue, that would absolutely need 2/3, but I'm questioning if this one does. I believe it does, but I'd like the opinion of.
I call the question on this discussion and we can move on to voting for the motion because a lot of us have to go to work in the morning.
I totally get that. I'm trying to find out what the vote threshold is because we've already exhausted. Well, actually, I see one more hand, but before we go to that hand, with what I just read, Ms. Purcell, am I correct that it needs 10 votes or does it need a majority? Or Mr. Brown, either one of you, and I see that Mr. Brown is looking furiously at his notes.
Yeah, so am I.
I'm looking at the provision.
I can tell you that I'm looking at the executive committee provisions, which are bylaw 12, and I'm looking at section 6, which gives specific instances where we need a 2/3 majority of all eligible positions of the executive committee.
One point of parliamentary inquiry, Madam Chair, if that's in order.
Yes, absolutely. That's always
Okay.
interesting.
So here we're looking at section 6, which says that a 2/3 majority shall be required to pass the following. And then it says any financial liability or contractual obligation lasting more than 3 months. In this case, as I believe the chair already pointed out, we're not entering into a contractual obligation. we're terminating one, and so that initial language that I read wouldn't seem to apply. Or I guess I'm phrasing this as a question. Would it be correct that that initial language would not apply?
And that is exactly my question for the parliamentarian.
As a parliamentarian, that's my opinion as well. I agree with Mr. Edgar.
Same as
That this
Madam
would not
Chair.
this would only require a simple majority.
perfect.
Madam Chair.
Okay, 1 second. So, okay, so
Madam Chair,
Right.
this is of the utmost importance. My phone is less than 1% and I need to vote as quick as possible. I'm not near a charger.
okay. I appreciate that. I guess I'm going to ask this question, Ms. Young, Ms. Tewksbury. Did either one of you want to make a amendment to the motion, or should we go to a vote on this motion, which is to cancel the contract? I just want to make sure that everybody is being heard here. So Ms. Young.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to extend it the 120 days, so that way we remain within bylaws.
Okay, so you're making a substitute motion or an amendment to the motion to say that we would.
Point of order, that's not an amendment to the motion, right? The motion is to cancel this contract.
I agree with you, and that's why I was asking the question, is this a motion to?
Okay, I'm
for a
sorry.
substitute- Right, so is this a substitute motion to say that this motion would be to cancel the contract, but to extend the convention for another 120 days? And that would be a substitute.
You know what? However it works out best. I would like to, I just think the 120 days part, I think, is important.
So you're suggesting that we cancel, even though Ms. Purcell and Mr. Brown gave us an option to go about this the right way and call a convention in the parking lot, move it over to the Embassy Suites. You are suggesting that we reschedule speakers that took a long time to book, do all additional work, potentially not get the venue in time, and not go with the two parliamentarians' recommendations for how to resolve this the easiest and least difficult way. Is that what I'm understanding, Ms. Young?
Then add it as an amendment. Then you can say no.
Then let's amend it to the
That's
Bay
not-
Area.
I mean, it's
I want to be
interesting for
clear.
Mr.
I want to be
Malagon
clear.
to present
I
something
want
that's like
to. I
the
want to be
least
clear,
difficult
guys.
way, because
Okay, everybody's cross talking now, so let's go.
I want one thing to be clear. If we do the parking lot thing in the DoubleTree, and and then have the convention at the Embassy Suites, are we in violation of the bylaws? Like, I understand we're good on Robert's rules, but are we in violation of the bylaws? Because those are two different things.
I believe that what's been said by all the parliamentarians is that to just move it without calling it to order at the DoubleTree first would be a violation of our bylaws. If we call it to order at the DoubleTree first, that would not be a violation of the bylaws. That's the way I'm understanding this. And if I'm wrong, parliamentarians can correct me, but that's the way I'm understanding this, and that's the way that I see it as well.
I concur. I agree. That's my opinion. If you first call it to order at the DoubleTree, and then somebody makes a motion to adjourn the meeting for 15 minutes later at the Embassy Suites, then I think you have complied with the bylaws.
Perfect.
All right. Well, then, I think, keeping it in February and just doing the thing in the parking lot is the best avenue.
Is that satisfactory to Ms. Young, so we can move forward with the motion?
Well, let me just do it this way. Ms. Young has made a motion to a substitute motion to postpone the convention for 120 days so that we're in complete compliance. Is there a second to that motion?
Madam Chair, I would like to withdraw my motion, as long as that we can put that in the main motion or make an amendment that to be very, very clear that we're not just moving it, that we will be doing everything properly.
Okay, so at this point, the motion that was made and seconded, that I think we're close to exhausting discussion on is to cancel the contract with the DoubleTree. That is the first part of this whole thing. So it sounds like any amendments might be made separate, or there might be other motions made, but is there any other discussion on canceling the contract with the DoubleTree Hotel?
I just want to say one thing. You had asked both me and Tara if we had an amendment, and she had one, or substitute or whatever. I didn't have an amendment, but I did want to understand clearly, because I didn't get this earlier. I know it was talked about, but I want to make sure that I understand how it works, the whole parking lot thing and moving. How many people do we need to have at the DoubleTree? What happens if they decide not to move it to the Embassy Suites? You know, all that kind of stuff. How does that work?
Okay,
I
I'm gonna be
really
honest.
don't understand, and I want to, before I vote on anything, I need to understand what.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. This all came up for the national convention. What could happen, I mean, it could, is that at the convention that's called to order at the DoubleTree in the parking lot, it could be done that the people in that parking lot decide to hold the entire convention with those few people in the parking lot. And they have the whole convention with 5 people and they make all of the things. That's a possibility. I don't think that would happen, especially if, you know, we made sure that certain people were in the parking lot. But I mean, Alicia and Richard, was that not the concern about the whole thing with the national convention, that could happen?
That was very much a concern, and we had extended discussions about that.
Right. So yeah. So that I can't answer that because it could happen. I mean, I can tell you if I call it to order in the parking lot, I'm not going to do that. But you know, I don't know. I don't have an actual answer for that because, use my language, but shit could happen. So
Well, I
don't
think that pretty
would-
much was, I mean, that's an answer, because that's what I was asking is, can that happen? And that's, like I said, that's a concern.
Yeah, no, I understand your concern. I absolutely do.
Even though you don't feel like you have an answer, I think that was a sufficient answer. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, so, all right. So at this point, we are at the fact that a motion was made to cancel the contract with the DoubleTree, which is the only motion that is on the floor at this moment. It was seconded. I see no further discussion. So this will take a simple majority vote. Can the secretary please take the roll? Or the vote?
Mhm. Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Malagon,
Aye.
I will vote yes. Mr. Vallandigham. Mr. Vallandigham. I'll come back to him in a moment. Mr. Butts,
Aye.
Ms. Stump,
I vote yes.
Ms. Young,
Abstain.
Mr. Alvstad,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Lepacek,
Yes.
Mr. Lima,
Yes.
Mr. Miniletti,
Nay.
Mr. Strawn, Mr. Strawn, Ms. Tewksbury. I'll try coming back to the people I've recorded as not voting. Ms. Tewksbury,
Yeah, sorry. With the back and forth, I really do not know what motion we're on right now. Is this just to cancel the contract, or?
yes, that's correct, with the DoubleTree. Ms. Tewksbury, what is your vote?
No.
Okay. And Mr. Miller,
I'll abstain.
all right. I'll come back to the people who I have recorded as not voting. Mr. Vallandigham, did you wish to vote?
Yeah, I had a hell of a time getting the thing to unmute. I will expressly abstain.
And Mr. Strong.
I do not see Mr. Strawn on the call. I believe that his battery died.
Okay, then Madam Chair, we would seat Mr. Ham.
Yes, we would.
Okay, but then I'll go to Mr. Ham for his vote.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9 to 3, or 9 to 2 to 3 to 1. That is yes, no, abstain, not voting.
Who's not voting?
Or I have, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Strong should not be recorded as not voting. All right,
No.
then it's actually, okay, 9 to 2 to 3 to 0.
Okay, now you do have one that's not voting because I'm not voting and the motion has passed. Does that only required a majority?
Yes, that's correct. Okay.
Okay, so we have now voted to cancel our contract with the DoubleTree. So we are now back to the fact that we've canceled that contract. So did somebody want to make the next motion? Whatever that might be. And I believe Ms. Tewksbury and Ms. Young had possible motions. I also believe that Mr. Malagon had a possible motion. So who has a motion?
I have a motion to adopt the Embassy Suites as a new venue for our 2023 convention.
And before we go to ask for a second, I want to ask an additional question. Is that to have them as our venue with the contract that's been provided?
Correct.
Okay, so your motion, and this will take a 2/3.
At least for the date. There might be minor amendments that will not have to do with finances or anything else. I don't know what might happen between now and Friday when it needs to be signed, but there might be minor adjustments. So as far as the location is concerned, for the same date, which would be February 17th through the 19th.
Okay, so the time, the place, and has everybody on this committee looked at the contract? If not, I can share it. But actually that probably would be best to share the contract on the screen, just because of the fact that this is a contractual obligation. So this is the contract that was provided on December 22nd. How can I make this full screen? Well, can everybody see it okay? I'm assuming that means yes. So this is the yes, sir, ma'am, whoever, yes?
Yeah, we can see it.
It's okay. I'm trying to unmute this, Richard Brown. I think that may not require the 2/3 vote because this contract obligation will not last more than 3 months. The convention is only a month and a half away. I'm just pointing that out. It's up to you folks to decide. Do you think it falls within that provision?
I'm going to stop sharing for a moment because I think there is another provision in finance that talks about contractual obligations of certain dollar amounts. And if not, it is in our operating procedures
Bylaw
manual.
11, section 3. Is that what you're looking
Yeah.
for?
So yeah.
Madam Chair, this doesn't appear to be the most recent contract, the one that you had
I'm sorry?
initially. The one that
It's
you were
the only one.
screen sharing.
It's the only one I've ever been given, so that's why I screen shared it. So if you have something more current, please screen share it, but that's the only one that I've been sent. And in fact, bylaw 11, section 3 states that shall not enter into any contract lasting more than 3 months, incur any expenses in a non-budgeted category, or incur any expense in a budgeted category greater than the amount budgeted more than $1,000 without a 2/3 vote of the entire executive committee. I believe that this contract is the same dollar amount as the last contract. So I don't believe that this would be more than $1,000 difference. So I think it actually would only require a majority vote, but that's what I wanted to look at before I said that. So if Mr. Brown and Ms. Purcell agree, I believe it does only require a simple majority.
Madam Chair, if we could put a quick pause here. I don't think that that's the correct contract. I'm trying to find the correct one. Ms. Tilford may have it available. So just if we're going to do the screen share and show the correct one.
Okay.
Give me just a moment.
Again, I shared is the only one that I've ever had sent to me, which was dated December 22nd. If there is something more current, please do share it, because that has never been shared with me at this point.
Madam Chair, this is Mr. Brown. I think that if this contract is not more than $1,000 more than the other one, if it was budgeted, then this 2/3 vote would not be applicable.
Okay, and I agree, but I'd like to see the most current budget to make sure that what I said is true. I was going by what I had, and it appears that what I have is not the most current contract that was
There
provided.
was I'm so sorry to interrupt. There was a version that was sent prior to the last convention committee meeting. I am trying to locate it at the moment, but it had a couple modifications, at least in terms of the setup based on what Gia and I talked to them about. So I'm looking for it right now. I believe it's in our convention.
Madam Chair, it's in the same thread that you pulled it. You just have to scroll down to the bottom. It was the one that was forwarded to the convention committee prior to our Saturday meeting. I think you just have to go all the way down to the it won't a screen share for me won't be.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. I wouldn't be able to do a screen share. I have it set on dark mode and people aren't going to be able to read it.
Okay,
So it's at the very bottom of the thread. That was the last one that was forwarded by Ms. Christopher to the convention committee prior to our Saturday meeting.
oh, I know why I can't find it. She sent it, I believe, to me at my other account. One moment. Or if
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just forwarded it to you to your chair email address.
okay, yeah, because I think she may have sent it to my other account, which I don't check as often any longer. So I don't see it yet. Can you just share it to save a little time here? Because I don't have it yet.
Yeah, I can do that. And I'll just withdraw my motion in the meantime. I don't think I phrased it the way that I intended. I was a bit distracted looking for that. Give me just a minute.
Who is Sarah Foster? I'll admit her. Okay, I see that Mr. Milligan is sharing his screen.
So this should be the correct one. If Ms. Tilford can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe this is the right one. She noticed the initial discrepancy.
Yeah, it looks like it is the same
This is
version
the
that I'm
correct.
looking at.
Is it the same version? The correct one, right?
Yes, this would be,
Okay.
I'm only aware of two versions, and this was the version that was shared prior to our last meeting.
Right. Yeah, I think this is the correct one. So I can go as slow or fast as people want me to. But
Slow. Go back to the summary of up. Okay, this is different in the contracted amount. Go down a little bit. Down. Stop. Okay, no, stop. This is $44,938. That is more than $1,000 different from the other contract, so therefore it will take 2/3.
That's anticipated revenue from the rooms. That's not.
It's still, our contract is anticipated revenue and room revenue. So the contract is that we're liable for that amount regardless because of attrition and because of cancellation and so forth. So one of the contracts was $38,000. This is $44,000. That is more than $1,000. So that would in fact mean that it takes 2/3. Because if you look at damages, damages are based on the minimum anticipated revenue. And the original had the same anticipated revenue, and this one is different. So yeah, it would take a 2/3 vote.
Okay, I'll scroll through the rest of the contract and then I will make my motion.
Okay.
So that's everything. I think this is the most pertinent part here that we already went over. So I will stop the share and I will move to sign the contract with the Embassy Suites that was displayed on the screen. There might be minor modifications, but they will not have to do with revenue change.
Okay, is there discussion on the motion to accept this contract? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody with their hands up for discussion. So can we, and am I correct? I mean, let me know now if anybody wants to talk, just say something. Nobody's saying anything. Going on. All righty then. Mr. Secretary, can you please take the roll call vote? And this will take 2/3 because this is a difference of more than $1,000. And 44,000 is actually more than our budget.
Was there a second to my motion? I just want to make sure I didn't hear one.
Correct. Is there a second? Who wants to second?
Second it.
Okay, Mr. Alvstead is seconded. So it's been moved and seconded. I see no discussion. So can the secretary please take the roll call vote?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Malagon,
Aye.
I will vote yes. Mr. Vallandigham,
I will expressly abstain.
Mr. Butts,
Aye.
Ms. Stump,
I will vote yes.
Ms. Young,
Abstain.
Mr. Alvstad,
Aye.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Lepacek,
Yes.
Mr. Lima,
Yes.
Mr. Minoletti,
Abstain.
Mr. Strawn, I believe, is no longer on the call. Yep. Ms. Tewksbury, Ms. Tewksbury, are you
Can you
muted?
come back to me?
Okay. And then Mr. Miller and Mr. Ham, I believe, are both seated. Mr. Miller,
Abstain.
Mr. Ham,
Aye.
okay. I'll now come back to Ms. Tewksbury.
I vote no.
Madam Chair, the vote is 9 to 1 to 4 to 0. Madam Chair.
I know. I'm thinking.
Okay.
The motion was specific to accept this contract, which includes the dates and times. I had said going into this meeting that I would not be voting on anything and I would leave it up to this executive committee. However, it appears that my vote is going to be the deciding vote one way or the other. And we do still have one other motion to consider, which is actually, I believe for change, well, no, gosh, I'm confused now because this would accept a contract, but we haven't actually made a motion to.
If I could make a point of inquiry, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I don't believe that it would require a motion to change the location if we were to pursue this option of having a small gathering just for the purpose of adjournment at the DoubleTree. Would that be accurate, Madam Chair?
I believe so. I'm sorry for the delay. I had anticipated not having to vote on this, and I know that that's really lame of me to say, but I had anticipated not having to vote, and I said I wasn't going to vote. The chair isn't going to vote.
Then it would appear that the motion fails.
Yeah. Another motion can be made differently, but at this particular moment, the chair is not going to vote. I'd like this committee to be able to decide on something that they can all agree on without it being ultimately up to me. So yeah, the motion fails.
Are there any other motions that can be made, or is that it?
No, there are additional.
Yes.
A motion is going to have to be made one way or the other because right now we have no convention whatsoever.
May I ask my colleagues what it is that's holding them up from voting yes? Would
Yeah,
that be in
you
order?
You can
Okay.
ask them.
Jessica, Paul, Tara, anybody else that didn't vote yes, can you give your reasoning for not voting yes, please? From my understanding, we have no issue with the bylaws as long as we meet up in the parking lot to call to order and then to adjourn to the Embassy Suites. I pledge to be there. I'm sure there'll be 20, 25 of us that'll be there and that'll happily be there and to move over to the Embassy Suites afterwards. Let's make this happen.
And just so you know, you can ask that question and it's up to them if they answer or not.
I'd like to point out one thing is that we have paid for travel for our speakers. We've gotten them all situated to where they have donated their time and their resources to come to do this for us. And I think it would be such a huge waste if we let that go and had to start over again. We've got some great speakers. We've got Connor Boyack from the Libertas Institute. He's the author of the Tuttle Twin series, Libertarian books for kids. And if we miss, we got Spike and we got Tasha and we've got so many great people coming to this, and they're counting on us to decide a place for them to come. If we can't do that, I don't know what we're gonna do, but that would be so embarrassing for me to have to tell them. So I don't want to have to do that. Please pick something, and that's all I have to say. I'm gonna get off of this, and I'm just gonna wake up in the morning and find out what you decided. Good night, guys.
I'm going to recommend that one of my colleagues that voted no, I hope that they have a different solution for this, because Ms. Christopher and I busted our ass for the last couple of weeks getting this together. This really should have been a no-brainer, given that 2 parliamentarians on this call gave us an option to ensure that everything was covered and that parliamentary procedure that validated everything. Everything was taken care of on this call. I don't understand if they don't understand what's going on, but if they have a solution to this problem, they're more than welcome to make a motion.
I would be more than happy to tell you what my holdup is. My holdup is I feel like the wording could be improved. I don't have a problem. I would actually really prefer to see it at the Embassy Suites. That's not the issue. The issue is the bylaws. And I don't know exactly what the answer is. And I really need more information from the parliamentarians about a good solution where we wouldn't be in violation of the bylaws. And the Rump Convention seems just really this whole like showing up thing at the other one just seems weird. And I want to be able to throw everything out on the table and figure out the best possible solution where we can still maintain following the bylaws and get to the Embassy Suites. I actually would prefer the Embassy Suites, but let's do this properly and the right way.
And I am going to say that we do need to come up with a solution, because right now we do have a time and place for a convention, except for we don't, because we just canceled the contract. So we can't just leave it at this. We have to come up with a solution. And I will admit I did not vote because I want this committee to come up with a solution, and I know there's reservations by people. And that was very difficult for me, and I'm not sure if I feel good. I don't feel good about any of this at this point, because it is an issue. But I would like for us, we need to come up with a solution at this point. We have to, because we've got 6 weeks until the time that people are planning on being at a convention. And right now we just approved canceling the only contract we have.
So I have a suggestion. I don't know how people that voted no would feel if we made it. Well, maybe this is a question for the parliamentarian first. Do I understand it correctly that if the executive committee met briefly at the DoubleTree in the parking lot or wherever, and adjourned the meeting officially to the Embassy Suites, would that satisfy the concern about rogue convention occurring in our absence?
I could actually answer that without the parliamentarian. Okay. In fact, yes, it would. The question of concern is this. In that parking lot, we could have 3 people that do that. There could be another group of 20 people that do something different. With a rogue, with a Rump Convention, people could get there before me and the secretary and the vice chair call it to order and have the entire convention without the rest of the people there. Well, that is the concern with the Rump Convention.
That's the concern of the parliamentarians. Yeah.
Well, so that even if
they need quorum to do that.
Yeah, right.
No, quorum is a majority of those that are there and registered as delegates. If 5 people show up, quorum is 3 people.
How would any of them be registered as delegates if we didn't?
They would register themselves. This is exactly what happened in 2020. The problem is that
Wait,
once
without a credential committee, they can just register themselves? They can just declare that they're credentialed?
What if they haven't been in the party for 90 days?
doesn't matter. If they're in the right time.
See,
and
it's who
place, they
shows up that count.
over.
This is what my
Right.
concern was.
Yeah, and I think that both of the parliamentarians would agree me on this. This is
What's
the
what's
concern.
to stop anybody from doing that with the regularly scheduled convention?
If I go in the restroom with a few people, can we have our rogue convention there at the official
Because
location?
everybody else is there expecting to have convention. So like,
Everybody else is there and they would stop you and they wouldn't
Yeah.
let you because there would
that's
be
a numbers
all of
thing.
the- Right.
But how could we convene business before 9 o'clock? That means somebody could show up at 6 o'clock in the morning in the parking lot. Business starts at 9 a.m. So if
Right,
we
so
have,
whoever's there at 9
so if we
is
have it
convention.
at the stroke of 9, then we have the meeting in the parking lot, because if you could
We
say
could
you could
film
have
it,
it,
so
if you could have it
we could prove
before
it
9
happened.
o'clock, I mean, somebody could show up at 5 o'clock in the parking, 5
Okay.
o'clock in the morning in the parking lot. So if we
Okay,
have
I'm
it at the stroke of 9, and we also ask if the DoubleTree will allow us to put up a sandwich board saying the executive committee and present delegates voted to move the convention to the Embassy Suites with address, and then put a time and date stamp on it, and ask if the DoubleTree will let us have a sandwich board in the parking lot for anybody else that shows up late or who hasn't been, despite the numerous amounts of attempts we're going to communicate to everybody in the party, everybody who's registered, everybody who's a member, that we are moving this to the Embassy Suites after the morning vote in the DoubleTree parking lot.
And I totally agree with you, and I don't know that this would be a problem. The problem is, and I believe that this is the concern, is that because it's at a different location, it makes it different than if it's at the actual convention location. So I believe that's the concern, and I believe that the parliamentarians, Mr. Brown just said a minute ago, that's what he concurs with. So that's where we're at. So I am going to make a suggestion. It is 10:26. I am going to suggest that we adjourn this meeting to a time certain of at some point tomorrow, meaning we don't need 7 days for a new meeting, but we adjourn this meeting to a time certain tomorrow to have time to think about the options rather than to spin out of control at this moment. And then at that point, a motion could be made to reconsider, a motion could be made, a lot of motions could be made, but at this point, we're at 10:30 at night, we're 2 hours into this meeting, and I think we're at a moment where we don't know what we're doing exactly. So we wouldn't have to wait 7 days. We could wait 12 hours for that matter, if it's adjourning this meeting to a time certain.
Mimi,
That-
before we do that, one of the people that abstained or voted no could make a motion to reconsider, correct?
They could make a motion right now to reconsider. That is true. And if you think that one people that just voted would be willing to change their vote, that could be something that could be done. And I see Ms. Tewksbury's hand up, so I'm going to go to Ms. Tewksbury.
Yeah, so Adrian had asked for those who voted no if they would like to speak on like why, I guess on why we voted no. Not that we have to explain ourselves, of course, but I just don't feel comfortable with the change. So I'm not gonna, I mean, I honestly thought it would pass because I thought the numbers were there to pass it. So I'm actually really shocked it didn't. But that doesn't mean that I'm just gonna vote for it. I can't vote against, I've been very uncomfortable about this whole thing. So I was really shocked at the beginning of the meeting when we had multiple people expressing concerns that I had as well. And I thought, okay, it's not just me. thought, maybe I'm crazy. I'm sure this has been looked into, but multiple people, including parliamentarians, had, the same concerns. So this is just not something I'm not gonna make the motion to reconsider personally. But I really thought it would pass, so I'm shocked at that. But I just can't vote for something that I have not been comfortable with this whole time.
Madam Chair, I think it would actually need to be, since this is a board, not a committee, even though you have the word committee in your name, it would have to be somebody who voted no to make the motion to reconsider. That
Agreed.
person would not have to change his vote. He can still vote no again, but it would have to be someone who voted no to actually make the motion to reconsider, or you could suspend the rules to allow anybody to move to
Mr. Brown, could it be someone who expressly abstained?
No, if this was a committee, like a true committee, yes, and anybody who did not.
Okay.
Yeah, this
Did not participate. Okay.
you're in the nature of a board.
Not a small committee, we're a board, so I stand corrected on that. However, the motion could be made differently, or a motion could be made. If the motion is made differently, even slightly, that would be in order. Or if a motion to suspend the rules was made to let it be considered, that could happen.
Either
Mr. Brown,
one would work.
I was thinking we were, going under small board rules, or I'm sorry, small board or committees, but we are not, because we're an executive committee, which is actually talked about specifically in RONR. So I think where we're at right now is, for Mr. Alstad, it doesn't sound like anybody is willing to make that motion to reconsider at this exact moment. I think it is going to take a bit more thought and consideration, and maybe that's, and I guess that's a good thing, because I think that this is an important decision. So I think that at this moment, the best thing to do is make a motion to adjourn to a time certain for the continuation of this meeting. Would anybody like to make that motion?
I make the motion to adjourn until 6 p.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, 1/4.
Okay, a motion has been made by Mr. Lima to adjourn this meeting until tomorrow, January 4th at 6:00 p.m. Is there a second?
Second.
I second it.
Okay, seconded by Ms. Young. Is there discussion on the, oh wait, actually for a motion to adjourn of this type, I do not believe that that's debatable. So we would go to a vote, and I believe this only takes a majority vote. So I'm going to try this. Is there any objection to adjourning until tomorrow, January 4th at 6 p.m.? Hearing no objection, we are adjourned at 10:32 to reconvene tomorrow at 6 p.m. I will send out a new Zoom meeting invitation to everybody for tomorrow at 6 p.m.
Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a,
Thanks.
bye-bye.